eyeballs, what did you see?
It couldn't have been me, sir. I was front row in my AOC t-shirt, foie gras sucking on a press release, sir. My head down, fourth shot, good little sheep, sir. Sit down, sweetie, the adults are gonna speak first. They trust the science and they're terrified of research. Here to thank our healthcare heroes, they've been feeding to the burnout, feet first. Until suddenly they dip mid-shift, take a header off a bridge. Such a shame, they were really such a sweet nurse. Now they'll never get the card and the cold slice of pizza meant to thank them for their teamwork. Now they'll never get the baggie full of checks mixed, which would be the one reward they'd see for the moms they had to intubate. And the countless cries of grief since we've been haunted by the specter of the C-word. Now all the applause for our healthcare heroes rings a very hollow note because we played it out like Freebird. See, add the ones and zeros in our fragile checks and balances, or checks for all the wealthy who have such unholy talents that we think it's patriotic that we all got zero balances. And re-elect Pelosi so she'll face our toughest challenges, which is analogous to water for a drowning man. Nancy disregards our impoverished with a spiteful and dismissive little waving of her withered hand. Cause 500,000 freezing on the streets is Biden's winter plan. And I bet you swore they told you you were voting for a different man. But really all you wanted was a different man. It didn't make a fucking difference if he finishes the previous inhabitant's agenda and starts auctioning protected land. Biden's born to leap at any war a donor's check demands. Turns out that you can't cure greed once it infects a man. Once they lose respect for human life and focus all their fucking efforts on the oil baron rescue plan. Honey, what are we to Hecuba or Hecuba to us that if she's starving we should give a damn? Why should we be moved to tears if someone isn't eating? We won't even recognize that food is essential to our being. It's just us and motherfucking Israel who will not guarantee that food's a basic human right. Because starvation is our favorite tool of genocide disguised as sanctioned democratic healing. That's me in the corner, losing my religion, gouging out my eyes and then dancing on the ceiling. Jesus fucking Christ, what a feeling.
Hey, what about you eyeballs? What did you see?
Who are these people? 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 Who are these people?
I watched a man decide to stand up for us, and I watched them take him away. So I had to break down your respect for the process, but the process won't be saved. Hi, I'm Nancy, and I love ice cream,
I enjoy it.
But not as much as watching people forced out of their homes.
I like it better than anything else.
Watching people forced out in the streets to live alone, and knowing that I own every homeless set of bones.
I don't know why, but it seems to agree with me. I have a lot of energy.
It's all more support from my hideous and ill-gotten throne, the weight of which is too much for you to bear alone. Which is why you ended up threadbare alone, kicked off your benefits and left to your own. The diner that you worked at was told it could open its doors, but there's no clientele, and it's probably just as well, because half of the staff didn't last, so they can't come to work anymore. You can't expect a corpse to pull itself through the door to flip omelets for $8 an hour anymore. Make your own food, clean your own floors, fake your own news, fill a whole morgue. Get a film crew out front, but don't let them in the doors. Let's keep it frontline heroes, America's soldiers, you know the score. Joe knows the score.
I watched a
are these people?
Stop saying the election is so goddamn important and start telling Joe he needs to rein in his supporters. Oh, that's right. Joe can't even rein in his tongue behind his resin molars. Pardon me for asking for some faculties from someone who is vying to control us. The man is not quite yet speechless, but you can bet he's soulless. And if you think he can stop the greatest threat that's ever held a public office, you might be Joe's equal in the ignorance department. But I can guarantee you we will finish what we started. A rabid coalition of activists and politicians, sex workers, educators, artists. Those of us who followed Bernie so close and fell the farthest. Who will not falter until all of us are cared for, regardless of whether it would turn a profit. Now I am not a leader or a teacher or a prophet, but I am here to proudly say today is the day I start campaigning for the role of Speaker of the House that we will build from the bones of the old Congress. And when I say bones, I do not mean framework or stones, I mean literally bones of the old guard keeping us from progress. Tonight's the last dawn before things get their darkest. Tonight's the last dawn before things get their darkest.
Who are these people?
Respect for the process. The calm before the storm, the calm before the harvest. Oh, that's right. Oh, that's right.
Who are these people?
Tonight's the last dawn before things get their darkest.
Our society and our world are full of these invented and built up and contrived facades. And sometimes some people come along with a hammer and smash that facade. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer to smash that facade. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer to smash that facade.
Welcome to the future. Shit where you please. The Wi-Fi's killer, but there's no more bees. So there's hardly any flowers, there are very few trees, and you'll pay $1,000 for some honey for your tea. But we got these awesome collars, mine's an Apple Model 3. It allows for better movement than the Tesla X Elite. It lets you customize the ads that it implants in every dream. And for premium subscribers, doesn't shock you in your sleep. But it doesn't stop there. It can analyze your speech, and if it hears disinformation, then it notifies police. It's a swift re-education, but it knocks you off your feet like your booster every 7th week. I faced the future boldly with 2 eager open eyes, and I picked a couple nuggets up that blew my fucking mind. Like you can taxidermy someone while they're technically alive, and they'll shine when it's election time. See, the Democratic voter base will pay them zero. Never mind if voting for the scarecrow is a vote along their party lines. They could stare into its marble eyes and claim there's something dignified. Unlike real politicians, this one doesn't need an oxygen or kit supply. But its function is the same as those who came before. The goals are never misaligned. It still spends all its working time performing pre-recorded fleecing sessions where it sugarcoats your slow and hungry genocide, while pouring billions into Nazi coffers, all the while selling you the story that we're moments till the MiGs arrive. So fuck it, ask Zelensky if he'll help replace our leaded pipes. Watch a fleet of Penske's show, stacks of bills in every size. Guess it only took a black sun and a couple Heils. Honorary goose step and some Nazi boots a quarter mile, all while Biden sneers his sordid smile. I don't know what was in this morning's vial, but it makes him stare 1,000 yards through all the prompters and the cards like he can smell the nearest child. His eyes are wide and wild, wider than the grave in which another 1,000 families were tossed in as I typed until they rose up to the sky unceremoniously piled. Which sort of flies right in the face of all this network ticker tape where the American economy has superhuman vitals.
And sometimes some people come along with a hammer.
Who are these people?
Who are these people? Sometimes people do come along with a hammer and smash that facade. That is the brilliant political on Jesse Jett's the oil baron rescue plan. Actually, that's Apple Model 3 slave collar off of everyone who disagrees with you is an extremist. And man, wasn't that predictive in nature? Because now we're all extremists. And that's so welcome to Indie News Now Live. It's Tuesday night. We're here 10 Eastern, just like we are every Tuesday night. And we're going to talk a lot about, like, same thing we talk about every week, Israel's influence on the entire world, from the United States to West to South America to Asia even. We're going to get to all that. And then we're going to get to some domestic stuff. Again, I don't like talking about duopoly electoralism, but it's going to be like, got fooled again. So we're gonna take a look at some of the things that are happening there, and I think I got a lightning round and we can get out of here. So before I do, I put up that slide earlier. This is the one. Thank you to Maggie Joy, who signed up for a 1-year subscription to IndieMediaToday.com. Appreciate that. That's how we keep this thing going. Really, really appreciate it. I noticed that whole column to the right actually is all new subscribers in 2026 or new supporters, and I really, really appreciate that. Cash App, $ Indie News Network, co-fi.com/Indie News Network. We're going to go right to IndieNewsNow.com, which is our website. It's the name of the show. It's a news aggregator. You can also watch us live or pick up merch there or tip the network. And then at IndieMediaToday.com on Substack. We're live there now. And INN Newsletter, because we're a founding member of Indie News Network, which is a network that puts out content 7 days a week for the most part. So check it out, indienews.network for the link there. It's in the ticker below. Okay. Sorry, everyone. Okay, I have got a ton of stuff. We're going to talk about Gaza specifically, what's going on in Gaza. Then we're going to swing over to the United States and Israel's operations and all the different things that they're doing to influence things here. And I'm not even going to talk about Netanyahu coming into town for Lindsey Graham's funeral or that whole war criminal nonsense. We'll get to that probably next week. I have more. And then we're also going to talk about what the consequences of supporting the duopoly. So that's kind of like a lightning round, but it's more just around the United States domestically. So, all right, I'm ready to get to it. So let's get started here. Oh, before we do, let me close and hide the bookmarks like I do every rookie move, Indy, rookie move. Come on. Okay. Right. Huron Pine, welcome, brother. The entity, that'll be the Cunt Collective. I'll say it. I don't know if YouTube is starring that out or not. Mark Taylor, good to see you. Democracy.inc, am I correct? Is that your Substack? If you're there in chat, let me know. Nay Bones over on Rumble, what's going on? I see. Okay, so we're live on Rumble. We're live on YouTube. We're live on Odyssey and BitChute and Twitter and Kick and Twitch and at Indie News Now Live, IndieNewsNow.com/live. I'm hoping that the power's going to hold out. We've got a big rainstorm coming through, lightning, thunder. Hopefully we don't flicker off. I have a backup generator, but if I do go out, it'll probably be 2 to 3 minutes before the internet comes back up. I will try to go back live if we get knocked out. Okay, so here we go. Here's the thumbnail. So first of all, some of the stuff that's going on in Gaza. And a lot of this stuff, I have a lot of articles tonight, so I'm not necessarily going to read through all of them. I'm going to try to just kind of skim through or show you some stuff that I kind of caught this week that I thought was important to pay attention to and add to our memory bank of all the shit that they're pulling off. Okay. So yeah, this is a horrible story. We'll get to that. The massive amount of tents on the beach. So all the Palestinian people kind of got together, or as many together in a while. And the pictures are stunning. And then $70 billion to rebuild. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to start with, wow, I was really honored and shocked because I just quote tweeted Eva Bartlett, Indie Media Award honoree, and did what I normally do. I saw that she had posted this thing about how, this is from that Israelis were getting a teeny glimpse in April of how Palestinians in Gaza felt for nearly 20 years. Israeli-caused power outages meant sewage containment pools couldn't be pumped into the sea. They had no option, right? And then, so I said Eva's been there and would be the first to remind people none of this started October 7th, 2023. It was only one day in 75 plus years of oppression. And she's got stuff going back to 2014 and 2009. All right, she says here, there's a whole article she ended up writing just because of that quote tweet. And I was like, oh my God, that's so awesome. Thank you. And I'm honored. And this is horrific. All right. She wrote an overview after leaving Gaza. So, but before that, she says, I lived in Gaza for 3 years and 2 Israeli wars on Gaza. Spent a lot of time with farmers and fishers who came under Israeli fire daily when they simply tried to fish or work their land. I also lived in Gaza, took public transit, and spoke directly with the people. International organizations that worked there tended, from what I saw, to be cut off from the reality, living in expensive apartments, dining at one of a handful of expensive restaurants, driving around in their own SUVs, really not interacting meaningfully with the people there. She said, I'm sure there were exceptions, but from my experience, this was the reality. But she said right there that she wrote an overview after leaving, which is relevant today as it outlines that the many ways Israel has been slow genocide in Gaza over a decade and a half before it began its current ongoing horrific genocide by ensuring Palestinians only just survived. Remember the starvation plus diet of calories. Bombing, burning, or destroying their agricultural land, firing on farmers, bombing or stealing their fishing boats, firing on or abducting fishers, ensuring the sewage was untreated and pumped into the sea, or overflown into the streets. It was ensuring the water was almost completely undrinkable, then deliberately starving Palestinians by denying the adequate entry of aid and destroying their food sources as above, denying exit for urgent medical care, and on and on and on. Does this sound familiar? Again, all of this was when she left there in 2009. None of this started October 7th, 2023. All right, during November 2012 Israeli war. And so please read this article. And there's a lot of data and information in here. So please read that. And there's more from Eva. Where is it? All right. So here's more. All right. She also says that recall that in 2014, now the story goes, and this is what I wanted to start with, Trita Parsi, and I can't show this video. It's horrific. I showed the pictures in the thumbnail. What he says is, so Israeli settlers, terrorists, attacked a Palestinian village, threw gasoline through a window onto a baby, nearly burning the young child alive, and beat a pregnant woman with stones. Zero Western media coverage, because of course not. They're going to ignore all this. And that's Trita Parsi. Now, again, Eva quote tweets with her own response to remind people, again, that in 2014, illegal Jewish colonists abducted a Palestinian youth, beat him, poured gas down his throat, and burned him alive. None of this is new. None of these tactics are new. None of the behavior is new. all of this has been repeated, war after war after massacre after massacre after massacre on people that are walled in, that cannot leave. And if they decide to leave, they can never come back and they can't have a passport. So how do you travel? Early in the morning of July 2nd, 2014, Mohammed Abu Khair went missing while going to mosque for morning prayers in occupied Jerusalem. His light body was found a few hours later, charred and beaten. Before his Jewish colonialist tormentors poured gas down his throat and lit him alive, they beat the then 16-year-old with a blunt object to his head. The autopsy report showed soot in his lungs and respiratory tract, indicating he was alive and breathing while being burnt. In 2015, colonialists firebombed a West Bank house, ensuring the fire burning to death an infant. In 2009, Israeli forces bombed the house of Shahid Abu Halima with white phosphorus, burning the infant and numerous other family members to death, gruesomely maiming others. The images on her blog post from Gaza after she interviewed the family who she met at Shifa Hospital after their house was bombed with white phosphorus. It's too graphic to post anywhere online, but there's a link to it to her WordPress site. But I mean, there is no limitation to their brutality, and because nobody is stopping them, they're continuing to press on with that brutality. And I'm not going to stop showing it, because this is the thing that we're going to use a tribunal at some point, when the people who actually are decent and want to hold these people accountable will. We will keep this for the museums. And I remember watching a Jonathan Cook produced video about 2040 when we stand in the Gaza Holocaust museums, and the kids turn to the grandparents and say, "What did you do? And how did you allow that to happen?" And the adult heads just kind of look down to the floor, and dude, it was horrific. I'll have to bring that video back. Next for Gaza. Okay, here's that story from Eva. Okay, so this is okay. Where is it? At the top. Displaced civilians. Again, I've been on a crusade that we need to come up with a better word to describe what's happening to these people and what's been done to them. After already living within imprisoned walls, having their entire house and everything they knew blown up, demolished, having to move with whatever they could carry and on their backs across the entire land that they still own, that's still theirs, that Israel hasn't stolen yet. All right, remember that Israel is now controlling 70% of the territory and demolishing it. A scene showing part of the large crowd of displaced civilians west of the city following the Israeli occupation's control over 70% of the territory. So just looking at some of these photographs is just wow. You see there's no privacy. It's just tense stitched. There's no, protection from weather. These things tend to flood out when it rains hard. And you're right on, like literally on the water. Of course it's going to rain at some point. You've got one road. All these buildings are demolished and would need to be, or in a state of disrepair to the point that they would need to be demolished and rebuilt. Okay. Gorgeous shot of the sunrise. And wow, just the mass amount of people and tents and life still there. And they're also being starved and denied aid and medical care. just looking at these pictures, it doesn't even really do it justice. This is the one that I actually added in the thumbnail because it's the vertical one, and it just shows how far down the beach this goes, because they've been pushed out everywhere else to the point where there's only a couple of how wide was the strip in the first place? Not very. It was only 25 square miles, right? Maybe bigger than that. But just looking at, again, and it's all just whatever they could make do, whatever they could find and scrap together. Because no new supplies are able to come in, at least not nearly to the level that are being ordered. That also is a beautiful shot out the window. So somebody went into one of those buildings that is not safe to enter because it could, it's far from stable, been hit by how many bombs. But just to see the tents and then the water, see how close they have to live to the water with no protection. Imagine having to, that's your life now. You had a shop, you went to school, now you're struggling to survive and living on a beach. Fuck Israel. So I don't think there's an article that goes with this. No, it's not. And yes, this does definitely make me angry. This is from Middle East Monitor. Okay, now we talked about the rebuild of Gaza. This is from the New Arab. Now, this is a photo from Getty Images. I did not pay to license this, so thank you, Getty. Or I'll take it out if you hit me for a fucking copyright. But the headline here, now thanks to the Gaza Board of Peace, the rebuilding of Gaza to cost 7 times more than all previous wars or massacres. And again, it reminds me of in the movie The Matrix and how this is like the 6th time we've destroyed it and we've become very efficient at rebuilding it. Yeah, but they're also going to line their pockets all the way. So now they're setting up for the $100 billion price tag by coming out the gate and saying it's going to cost $71 billion, which already is more than all previous wars. In a new report co-written with Palestinian groups, Oxfam says the reconstruction of Gaza will cost at least $71.4 billion. This is in the New Arab. This was, I believe, on Friday of last week, July 24th. We saw that horrific shot. And then they deny that there's a genocide happening. Then they deny that they've completely leveled the place to the ground effectively and rendered all these buildings uninhabitable and forced people to live in tents with no medical care, no medical supplies coming in. And, oh yeah, they're shooting and arresting and imprisoning the doctors and the nurses. And there's no roads and there's no more ambulances because they blew all them up. Yeah, deny all that after looking at photos like that. Fuck you and fuck Israel if you think that. The reconstruction of Gaza will cost at least 7 times more than every previous attempt to rebuild a devastated coastal enclave combined and will not succeed without Palestinian leadership, UK charity Oxfam warned on Thursday. Oxfam, together with Palestinian NGOs, have presented world leaders with a plan for Gaza's recovery that puts Palestinian ownership and accountability for Israel's genocide at its core, the charity said in a statement. That sounds awesome. Who's listening to that exactly? Because the people that are dropping the bombs and the people that are moving the yellow line toward the water, they're not. This report estimated the total cost of rebuilding Gaza at a staggering $71.4 billion, pointing out that this was 7 times combined the cost of rebuilding the devastated territory after previous Israeli massacres, such as the ones in 08 and 09 that Eva had been at, and 14 and 2021. Richard Hawkes, the chief executive of Oxfam's UK branch, said, quote, the UK government must take the lead in ensuring Palestinians are the primary decision makers in rebuilding the Gaza Strip and should no longer suffer the devastating consequences of the Israeli government's ongoing genocide and aid blockade in Gaza. It's very nice to be able to say that from a comfy room in the UK. And I agree with that statement wholeheartedly. I just feel like it's a toothless statement in that vein, because it's going to fall on deaf ears. He added that the UK government must show its commitment to international law, because it never has yet, by ending the sale to Israel of arms that are used in violation of international law, while stopping all trade with illegal Israeli settlements. While they prosecute people as terrorists for destroying Elbit systems, this is not rooted in reality, unfortunately. It's a nice sentiment, like I said, but it does not take into account what's actually happening in the world right now with Andy Burnham taking over as prime minister, for example, and him bringing on Zionists. Oxfam's report entitled Building Gaza Anew was authored after consultations across Gaza and presented to Trump's Board of Peace and world leaders. And you know what they did? They took the $71 billion number, doubled that, and threw the rest in the garbage. I'm sorry to say. I love these people. I wish what they're saying was going to happen, could materialize. But my feeling is that's exactly what's going to happen. It underlines that Palestinians must lead the process, saying that any plan imposed from the outside will fail, no matter how much is invested in it. Unless Israel and the U.S. decide to get rid of all the Palestinian people there. And then will it fail? I don't know. What they'll do is they'll create a technocratic state that literally monitors every single person that goes in or comes out. A cashless society with digital currency where you can't do anything unless you're on their grid and they know everything about you. It estimates that the total cost of recovery in 08, 9, 14, and 21 were around $10 billion at today's prices, which again is 1/7 of what they feel is needed to rebuild Gaza today. However, at every single one of these instances, reconstruction was stopped by continued Israeli blockade and siege and donor shortfalls, which is not going to stop anytime soon. Again, more than 73,000 Palestinians, according to the official number, we know it's much more, have been killed, while over 173,000 have been injured by Israeli attacks since October 2023, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. Even though there is no more record that they can possibly keep, they have no computers, they have no electricity, they have what they can count and what they know and what they can carry. 1.9 million people in Gaza alone have been forcibly displaced out of a total population of 2.3 million. Where are the 400,000 that haven't been displaced? And human development set back an estimated 77 years. So I guess the other 400,000 are either dead or missing, because none of them are living in their existing homes anymore. According to the UNEU World Bank Rapid Damage and Needs Assessment of April of 2026, Gaza has suffered $57.9 billion in total damage and economic losses, with an estimated $71.4 billion required for recovery and reconstruction over the next decade. So that number isn't even coming from Oxfam. It's actually coming from the EU World Bank and the UN, which is all the bankers. Fuck these people. Again, look at them overestimating by far, because they're going to be the ones that end up profiting from the reconstruction at some point. The report includes information about the intangible damage that the war has caused. Damage to Gaza's knowledge, care systems, environment, social bonds. Again, what do you think Trump did with those reports or those, that part of the report? What do you think Netanyahu did? What was destroyed in Gaza was not merely steel and concrete. Israel eradicated an entire social and economic world built up over generations, and only Palestinians can rebuild it. Reconstruction is not only a humanitarian task, it's a political one. A plan designed in foreign capitals, however well-funded, would be a cosmetic exercise. That was their plan, Gaza 2035. Reef and I covered it 2 Mays ago. Simply another form of control over Palestinian land and lives. And that wasn't Trump. That was Biden in office. That was before he decided to fuck off. Our consultations across Gaza carried one unmistakable message. Nothing about our future without us, added Misyef Jamil, senior researcher at MAS. Fuck Israel. Okay, for not even considering this, because you know they're not going to. They have their own plan, and it's already been laid out. And Kushner's involved, and Witkoff's involved, and Trump's involved. We already know all of this. So it's like, to publish this is like a wish list. That's nice. Somebody needs to, I guess, put it together. But at the same time, it also makes me sad that they're setting up that Trump is going to be the arbiter of some fund that will be at least, and you know it's going to exceed 9 figures at some point instead of just, or 12 figures, $100 billion. And he'll be able to dictate and set the construction contracts and line his family's pockets all along the way. Fuck Israel. Now, the other thing that I wanted to bring in, this was actually a little bit of a positive story, although we're going to talk about breakthrough news and what's happening to them as an organization, the persecution under NSPM 7, the accusation of them being a part of a larger network, etc., in a few minutes. But before that, they brought a great article on Thursday of last week about activists launching a global campaign to debunk the ceasefire narrative. All right, Israel continues to commit massacres in the war-torn enclave on a daily basis, the latest of which wiped out an entire family of 6. We know, we've been covering this stuff every single week, but most people have turned away. They're like, really? That's still happening? They can't believe it. So let's read about that. I want to read this one. 10 months into the U.S. brokered Gaza ceasefire deal, the Israeli genocidal aggression against the besieged territory hasn't stopped, nor has the dire humanitarian situation improved. Over the ostensible truce period, Israel killed at least 1,185 people across the Gaza Strip and injured 3,816 others, according to, again, Gaza's health ministry, which, how do they keep records at this point? On a cell phone? On a Google Drive? I don't know. I'm not joking. I'm legitimately asking. I don't know. But the first thing is that a ceasefire does not include when you kill 1,185 people. This takes the death toll of Palestinians killed in the genocidal Israeli aggression since October 23 here, according to this, to 73,311 people. It's, again, way more because of the people who were vaporized that can never be counted, the families that were wiped off the register that could never be counted. So many different... Daily massacres have been committed as the Israeli occupation forces have continued to launch airstrikes and artillery shelling while expanding ground incursions, during which civilians were shot dead. The latest massacre of which took place on Tuesday, July 21st, when an Israeli airstrike hit a house in the Sabra neighborhood in Gaza City. A man of the al-Masri family, his wife, and 4 children were burned alive in the aerial assault. Earlier that day, 2 other men, also from the al-Masri family, were burned beyond recognition when an Israeli strike targeted their vehicle in the town of al-Zahra, northwest of the Nusrat refugee camp in central Gaza. We cannot turn away. The consistent mass killing in Gaza, alongside Israel's continued ban of aid entry, reconstruction, and emergency evacuations, provides stark evidence that the genocide remains in full swing and the Trump-dictated ceasefire is nothing but a facade. They lied to you, say Palestinians and their supporters, as the genocide continues. So on Thursday, July 16th, Palestinian and international activists, journalists, and humanitarian workers launched a global digital campaign under the hashtag They Lied to You. The campaign aims to debunk the narrative of the Trump and Netanyahu admins, which claim that the October 2025 ceasefire brought the Israeli genocidal aggression against Gaza to an end. They lied to you. They call it a ceasefire when food was blocked, hospitals were attacked, and neighborhoods were erased. Nicole Genet noted on one of the campaign's videos. She's with Now News. I've showed some of her videos before. And they counted on your silence. Don't let their words become a cover for ongoing suffering. That's what Palestinian activist, producer, and storyteller Alana Hadid continued. A number of Palestinian journalists and citizens appeared in another video aired by Quds Network using the same slogan of the campaign while sounding the alarm about the persistent catastrophic situation in Gaza. While the campaign has gone globally viral over the past week, the people of Gaza still need the people of conscience around the world to amplify their voices and organize more effective global actions to end their tragedy. So they made these videos hopeful. They're trying to create a campaign, at least to raise awareness, to stop the gaslight. I also, next week, I'll be bringing the Corbett Report Indie Media Award honoree. By the way, Breakthrough is also an Indie Media Award honoree. Corbett Report made a video similar. I don't know if you remember a couple months ago, I showed the 9/11, a conspiracy theory in 5 minutes. He made one about October 7th, 2023, a conspiracy theory. It's outstanding. It's up on his Rumble, his YouTube, and Substack on thecorbettreport.com. You can go look it up, but I'm going to bring it next week, and we'll show that on the show. 5 minutes. It's freaking brilliant. Okay. So that's just the Gaza portion of Fuck Israel this week. I got a lot of Fuck Israel, unfortunately. So buckle up. Support independent media, please, because we need it more than ever. I appreciate everyone hanging out and watching this again and not turning a blind eye, because a lot of people do. These are the people that have already supported our channel and our endeavor here to be fully independent and user-funded and call like we see it, and no sacred cows. The ways to do that: Cash App, $, Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network will pop something up on screen. You can do it at IndieMediaToday.com on Substack, subscribe monthly or annually there, or at INNNewsletter.com. That's the other Substack newsletter I publish. And then we have Indie News Now. It's the name of the show. It's also the name of a website that's a news aggregator where a lot of these stories that I'm pulling tonight are coming from. Middle East Monitor, Breakthrough News, The Dissenter with Kevin Gostola, The Dissident, Dissent in Bloom, Left Voice. All their RSS feeds come in, and it's a 24/7 unfiltered, advertiser-free platform to get to all of these different great sites that I've vetted. A lot of them are Indie Media Award honorees. Okay. And you can also pick up merch there, INN merch, or you can leave a tip via a Stripe link. So thank you for doing that for everyone who does. All right. I see chat's been busy. I like seeing that. I appreciate everyone. Thank you. Hi, Natalie Williams. Good to see you. Disaster Capitalism. Pretty much. I see Karen Peterson, Shane Muir's in the chat too. How are you guys over on Rumble? Appreciate my AM Wake Up fam. And Mark Taylor, I think the best name for what's happening is the U.S.-Israel genocide, given that our bombs, money, diplomatic cover, we're just as guilty, maybe even more so as the Israelis. I agree, but let's not absolve the UK. Let's not absolve Britain from all of this, because they're part of this as well. You know, they're providing the bases in Incirlik and a grounding for the spy flights and plenty of other support, as well as, of course, you know, they're arresting pro-Palestine supporters and charging activists that are fighting Elbit systems with terrorism. So they're not the only ones. I'm going to, again, talk about some stuff domestically that I usually don't talk about. And some stuff that I do, which is persecuted journalists. Story's crazy, and not so crazy at the same time. There has been a Republican witch hunt against a specific group of people, and that's Breakthrough News is part of that group. And then the other thing is this HR 8800 that passed the House that has these inclusions that will officially merge our intelligence assets with Israel's, and that's a bad thing. Gen X Girl has something about that. So I want to bring some of those things. But first I want to talk about, again, I brought an article from Breakthrough News about Gaza and about these activists, but I also want to bring a story from another Indie Media Award honoree, Kevin Gosztola. Kevin Gosztola famously covered the Assange trial day by day by day. He's a Chicago journalist, big fan of his, independent. He used to have an outlet called Shadowproof that he shuttered a couple of years ago. He maintains a newsletter called The Dissenter, which I am an annual subscriber to. And this was one of the articles that came out recently. Okay, Trump's war on dissent. House committee subpoenas Breakthrough News. Indie Media Award honoree, Breakthrough News. Remember, if they're coming after you, you must be doing something right, right? Okay. The Republican-controlled House committee subpoenas Breakthrough News in an effort to force the outlet to turn over their financial records. Why? What's happening here? Okay. House Ways and Means Committee subpoenaed Breakthrough News in an effort to force the outlet to turn over their financial records and records of internal comms. Breakthrough News, a nonprofit media and educational organization aligned with grassroots and social movements throughout the world, said, quote, "For years, Republican lawmakers have painted a target on our backs, falsely claiming that our political views and reporting are part of some foreign plot. Make no mistake, this is a flagrant abuse of power and a direct attack on our work as journalists and on the First Amendment generally." Subpoenas were also issued against the People's Forum and Tricontinental, the Institute for Social Research. Those are run by Vijay Prashad. During the media organization's weekly live show, chief correspondent Rania Khalek emphasized that Breakthrough News is a nonprofit newsroom that complies with every tax rule, every audit, and every public reporting requirement, unquote. The organization has not taken a dime from any foreign government, unquote. From my vantage point, what we did wrong in the eyes of these people who have subpoenaed us, we've covered the Palestine Solidarity Movement with staunch opposition to the genocide in Gaza. We've shown people what ICE is actually doing in the streets of America, which is something that these people are very upset about. We've reported on Washington's crimes around the world, from Cuba to the Congo to Iran to here in Lebanon, and she's based in Beirut, where I'm speaking to you from. Khalek continued, quote, "That's the kind of journalism that these people would like to shut down." And that's the strategy here. I mean, they know that our budget at Breakthrough News is literally microscopic compared to the billionaire-funded networks that literally run the airwaves. They don't even need to win here or prove we did anything wrong. He thinks that this is really just about trying to bury them in legal proceedings until they basically run out of money or stop reporting out of intimidation. And that's a good idea, maybe. So Zoe Alexandra, news director for Breakthrough News, promised that the outlet would not stop doing the journalism that we've been doing that has defined us, that's grown us, this audience that we have today, because we know that's the journalism that's needed. Both Alexandra and Kolek urged viewers to sign the petition calling on the House Ways and Means Committee to stop muzzling the press and drop its disgraceful investigation into Breakthrough News and other outlets. Code Pink is part of this. This is all a China witch hunt, by the way. This is all to connect everybody to Jody, what's her name, Evans, and her husband, Neville Singham, who's like a billionaire that lives in China. I believe he's an American citizen, but they feel like he is the funder of an entire leftist sect, from the PSL to the Answer Coalition to Tricontinental to Breakthrough News to Popular Resistance to several other organizations within this outlet and within this network, which also is funded by another activist that is now being extradited to the United States, or in the process of, and was arrested in Spain, Fergie Chambers. The subpoenas are part of an ever-expanding crackdown on dissent under President Donald Trump. Stephen Miller, a top political advisor in the White House, recently maintained that the left appeals to civil liberties in an effort to shield its own violence and protect itself from criminal punishment. Violence, again, similar to the way that they called it's holding a camera is now violence. Holding up a microphone and writing down what these people are doing is now violence. And then here's Stephen Miller. When the leftist who does not believe in freedom, yes, I do, who does not believe in civil rights, yes, they do, who does not believe in any ordered notion of justice, not your ordered notion of justice, you fucking Nazi, protest that we're violating his rights, which you are, understand that he's lying to try to persuade people who are not closely following the political scene that some injustice has been perpetrated against him. Yeah, because he'd be screaming that for absolutely no reason, right? That is projection on an insane scale. Ask Greg Bovino about lying to try to persuade people. Ask Zaka, who's admitted that they do exactly that. The above was stated to justify turning the machinery of government that was built to fight terrorism against a constellation of supposed left-wing groups in the United States, including quote-unquote Antifa, which is not an actual organization. Since early 2025, Trump and Republicans have backed legislation that would make it easy to revoke tax-exempt status for groups or organizations that do not abide by his directives or agree with his views. Yeah, because that's what freedom is, right? More specifically, a federal grand jury investigation was launched into Neville Singham, a U.S. citizen who the Trump Justice Department is targeting because he resides in China and has made significant donations to Code Pink, the People's Forum, Tricontinental, and other activist groups. Singham is married to Code Pink co-founder Jody Evans. Wow, I feel like I just said all those things without reading it first. That's awesome. At least I remembered it. Thanks, Kevin. A letter signed by House Ways and Means Committee Chair Jason Smith claims that from 2022 to 2023, more than $1 million flowed from Mr. Singham's donor-advised fund to Breakthrough News. But according to a Goldman Sachs spokesperson, quote, all distributions from his donor-advised fund were made to legal nonprofits as determined by the IRS. There have been no distributions from the account since August 2023, and it was closed in early 2024. So it sounds like he might have actually donated that 1.1 million during that time, but that it was completely legal and on the up and up, reported, and everybody's known it for 3 years. My guess is it's what helped Breakthrough News fund themselves to travel all over the world to cover these horrors. the genocide in the Congo, the bombings in Lebanon. Mara Verheyden Hilliard, the executive director for the Partnership for Civil Justice Fund, represents Breakthrough News and initially challenged the House committee's request for records. She recently spoke out against the Trump admin's use of McCarthyism as a political weapon to crush political opposition. Quote, it's a direct assault on freedom of speech and democracy. It's an effort to justify repression at home and usher in a greater crackdown against our constitutionally protected First Amendment rights to speak out and protest and publish. This is an attempt to frighten people into silence. It's an attack on democratic rights by an administration of democracy, afraid of democracy, because it knows the people of the U.S. are growing in opposition to its repressive programs. And it won't work. Standing together, we can ensure this tired playbook fails. Verheyden Hilliard likened the subpoenas to actions by the House Un-American Activities Committee in the 1940s and 50s during the Joe McCarthy witch hunts and the communist scare, the Red Scare. Smith rejected the comparison. Of course she did, saying it was historically inapt and legally irrelevant. Un-American Activity Committee's investigations were directed at rooting out political beliefs and compelling witnesses to expose their associations. So how's that different already? Well, because those associations were quote unquote exposed and being persecuted. Yet the investigation seems purely political, given that there are no specific allegations of criminal wrongdoing by Singham or the organizations that reportedly received donations from him. The House committee initially sought records from Breakthrough News back in February. Its characterization of the media outlet makes it clear that the committee is engaged in a partisan witch hunt. Now, what's really interesting about all this also is I don't really hear Medea Benjamin mentioned, though I know that she's one of the targets here too, because she's consistently a thorn in the side of the members of Congress. They kind of treat her like a little mascot and use her as the extremist person that they allow to come into the building, make a little splash, and then move on her merry way, but never really ruffle too many feathers. I remember an event back in 2021 that Colin Radix Carter, INN's Colin Radix Carter, who's on vacation, shout out to my brother Care Bear. Colin went to an event where he challenged Cori Bush and the squad, who were all sitting on stage, talking very comfortably about something, and he noted that Medea Benjamin was standing in the back and didn't want to challenge any of them. And when somebody asked her about like why she wasn't protesting them too, well, they're on our side, and we have to choose who our allies are, type of stuff. And I disagree with that wholeheartedly. But here's what Congress and here's what the indictment said, the subpoena said. Quote, since its inception in 2020, Breakthrough News has produced and distributed content that aligns with pro-CCP rhetoric across both the United States and globe. Following the Hamas terrorist attack against Israel on October 7, 2023, because Israel never did anything that led up to that, and Israel didn't didn't pull their soldiers off the wall. And, well, again, we'll debunk October 7th. Next week. Breakthrough News dramatically shifted their coverage in a way that suggests its intent on sowing division within the United States. You mean reporting the truth about United States war crimes and their aid to Israel in its retaliation massacre on an innocent, unarmed people. You mean collective punishment, which is a war crime, and murder of children, which are war crimes, and destruction of educational facilities and hospitals and ambulances, which are war crimes, right? Your organization also has deep ties to the Party for Socialism and Liberation, PSL, which orchestrated the anti-immigration ICE riots in LA, resulting in violence and dozens of arrests last June. Completely unfounded accusation right there. The House committee also maintained by scrutinizing political associations that Breakthrough News has played a role in political violence somehow, which is incredibly alarming given Miller's pledge to disrupt, identify, defund, debank, arrest, and prosecute anyone that the the administration perceives as quote-unquote terrorists. We are all Assange. This is what they did to Assange. They deemed WikiLeaks a terrorist, non-state, hostile actor, and that allowed them and gave them the license to then open season and plot assassinations in London streets against Julian Assange. We know this already. Haven't reported on it. Quote, Congress shouldn't be using a tax investigation as a pretext to dig through a newsroom's internal communications or financial records, stated Seth Stern, advocacy director for Freedom of the Press Foundation. And I have my issues with them. Freedom of the press applies to all journalists, regardless of whether politicians like their editorial slant or their politics. That also includes Palestinian journalists, though I don't think the Freedom of the Press Foundation really wants to acknowledge them much. Stern further contended, quote, allowing a congressional committee to harass an independent newsroom with a broad subpoena sets an awful precedent, which they want to set. If lawmakers can abuse tax oversight to single out outlets whose reporting offends them today, no newsroom in America is safe from government intimidation tomorrow, which is music to the administration's ears, man. Do you not understand? Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. I don't know. Okay, next. I don't even remember what I had next. Let's see. Oh, right. This fucking lunatic. Okay. Remember when they say that, like, you know, Zionists and the World Jewish Congress, and they don't try to control or fund anything, or what do you mean? Because it's anti-Semitic to oppose us, and if you call out what we're doing, you're also anti-Semitic. Here's Dr. Sam Youssef, the president of the World Jewish Congress, just sent a warning to every potential America First candidate wishing to run for U.S. Congress. If you do not support Israel, if you do platform or say anything we deem anti-Semitic, we will target them and start a fund for their opponent. Listen to this fucking craziness. 56 seconds.
Any candidate running for a seat in this building, whether for Congress or Senate, whose platform includes anti-Semitism, we will target them as they target us. Accordingly, we will start a fund to help their opponents. We cannot possibly sit by and let anti-Zionists determine our future. None of this will be easy. It will take time and effort from all of us. And Jews cannot fight this fight alone. Frankly, we shouldn't have to, because this is not a Jewish issue. It's a democratic issue. It's a moral issue. It's a human issue. Let us build a coalition so strong, so united, so determined that no extremist movement can fracture it. And above all, let us be bridge builders, unshakable. And any candidate running for a seat.
Bridge builders while they blow up babies in Gaza. Moral while they inflict starvation and deny medical aid to babies and formula and water. Huh? You can go fuck yourself in every way possible. Piece of shit. Okay, finally, for this segment, we've got Gen X Girl, who I'm a friend of the show, friend of the network. She put together this It's Do or Die Time America. Now, again, electoralism. Call your senators. I mean, allegedly this is working, and she says so here, and I'll point this out. Keep calling it's working. Bernie Moreno tells me he's not in favor. There's nobody here who's a more ardent supporter of Israel's right to exist, but I don't think we should integrate our military with anybody, not even the Bahamas. So at least calling them and trying to educate them as to what this bill is, because we know these idiots don't read it. All right. Here's from AIPAC. All right. AIPAC is celebrating the win in the House. count the dollars, count the access to U.S. advanced tech, count the gloating about you paying Israel to take care of their country. So here are the different sections of this House resolution that passed, and it's now called Senate Bill 4784, which is the National Defense Authorization Act. It's the military bill of $1.15 trillion that's now fucking passed the House. Now, last time it failed the Senate, they were close, but they need 60 votes on this. Will there be any Democratic senators that cross? I don't know, but this is also going to fund Golden Dome and U.S.-Israel Defense Cooperation Initiative and a report on strategic partnership. It's going to establish a liaison within the military that works closely with the Israeli military, cooperation to counter unmanned systems. This is really bad shit. You know, Oz has been hair on fire. I love Oz. Again, fuck electoralism. If you believe in it, if you think that this actually will accomplish something, this is apparently the time to do so. They're going to vote on however they're going to vote, whether you make those phone calls or not, in my opinion. All right. But I did want to call, attention to this because since there are two versions, you can tell the senators to remove all the Israel sections. No integration, no cooperation, no intelligence integration. I get that that's probably going to happen in some way, shape, or form anyway. But we don't need to set it in stone as fucking law. All right? So, shout out to Gen X Girl, who has been tireless, if you go to her page, in sharing stuff about what's happening with campaign finance, with how Zionists are trying to influence all of our politics, all of our legislation, and completely turn our entire Congress Zionist. Like we just saw there. There was a direct threat from the World Jewish Congress. It's really the World Zionist Congress because he doesn't represent anti-Zionist Jews, and he would agree there too. They don't represent all Jews, but they call themselves the World Jewish Congress, though they are rabidly extremist right-wing. All right, Micro Peen Mark Levinlet has promoted war 629 times since Trump was inaugurated. That includes praising Trump when he bombs and attacking Trump when he sought peace. Fuck Israel, fuck the administration, fuck anybody who supports this bullshit. All right. Okay. And because, again, I don't know, there were several places that covered the persecution of Breakthrough News and these independent outlets and the anti-China angle that's behind it. There are a bunch of people that have also talked about this House resolution stuff. I'm glad there are people talking about that stuff because I don't really want to. But once in a while, I feel like I've got to mention it because it also is relevant because it's Israel enacting their influence. Even this China stuff is really because they're covering Gaza. They're covering Lebanon. They're covering Syria. They're covering all the shit that Israel's doing around the world. Okay? So support independent media. Support Breakthrough News. Support The Dissenter. Support Gen X Girl. Support INN. The ways to do that, the people that do that, I love you all. Thank you for doing so. Cash App, $, Indie News Network at ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. That'll kick over to PayPal, but it'll pop something up on screen. You can do it over at Substack at IndieMediaToday.com or at the network Substack at INNNewsletter.com. You can subscribe annually or monthly there. Or you can do a one-time tip to the network over at IndieNewsNow.com, which is also a 24/7 news aggregator. Again, I want to say thank you to Maggie Joy, who became an annual subscriber to IndieMediaToday.com this week. Really appreciate it. That's how we keep this thing going. All the people there that you see that are highlighted have been longtime supporters of this network and this channel and this show and this endeavor and show up on a regular basis or have contributed a substantial amount, and appreciate and love all you people. Thank you. I look at this graphic every single day. All right. Next section is how is Israel and their policies and their behavior wreaking havoc elsewhere around the world, outside of Gaza, outside of the United States, because their reach, for whatever reason, is absolutely massive. All right. So let's start here. This is the thumbnail that I put together for this segment. When we're going to, again, go around the world. Now, would this be happening if Israel and the United States were not openly attacking Iran? What you're seeing here is that Iran and Iraq have agreed to strategic cooperation, backing a dialogue to resolve their crises. Wait, what? I did not see this anywhere else. This was last Friday. Iran and Iraq had a conversation to come to peace? Wait, what? I guess being under the thumb of U.S. imperialism is a uniting experience. All right? So this is, again, from Middle East Monitor. They've been doing excellent work, and I've been bringing their RSS feed for coverage on Gaza and beyond for about a month now. All right. That Iraq and Iran agreed on Thursday to prepare a comprehensive strategic document to expand cooperation between the two countries, saying regional crises can only be resolved through dialogue, diplomacy, and respect for the sovereignty of states. Wow. The agreement was announced in a joint statement issued during an official visit by Iraqi Prime Minister Ali Falih al-Zaidi to Iran, where he led a delegation of political, security, and economic officials. According to a statement published by the Iraqi Prime Minister's media office, al-Zaidi and the accompanying delegation held talks with the Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian and several other officials on bilateral relations, regional developments, and international issues of mutual interest. I can only imagine what those issues of mutual interest are. I'm guessing that it's Israeli and U.S. bombs. The two sides agreed to draft a comprehensive strategic document aimed at expanding cooperation and placing bilateral ties on a stronger institutional footing. This is a good thing. This is peace. And watch, Trump is going to claim credit for this. If I know him, I scared them into working together, just like I did with North and South Korea. The document will cover political, economic, cultural, and security cooperation, as well as other areas of mutual interest. Awesome! Both sides also agreed that the foreign ministers of Iraq and Iran will finalize the draft document as soon as possible before submitting it to senior officials for signing and implementation. Finally, a glimmer of good news. I mean, again, Iran has done a incredible job to hold off the assault from, the U.S., Israel, UK, and Western-backed allies. I think even Turkey. And now they're starting to form an allegiance in the region, which is a good thing. They need more allies because Lebanon sold them out in signing the strategic agreement with Israel. Agreeing to get rid of Hezbollah for the IDF and allowing Israel to have permanent occupation until they determine that Hezbollah is sufficiently eradicated, which they never will be. So this is a good step. Now remember that the Greater Israel Project includes chopping off a portion of Iraq and a portion of Iran and claiming it for Israel. So they certainly have mutual interest in working together to fight that power. Fight the power that be. All right. So a little bit of glimmer of good news. Now, here, this one, on the other hand, talk about your all-time understatement. I saw this headline from Left Voice, and I just said, May? The headline is, Middle East Monitor, Israeli violations in Lebanon may amount to war crimes, says the UN rights chief. Really? May? Come on. Come on, man. All right. The UN Human Rights Chief said on Monday, let's blow this all up. There they are sitting at the table. Right? Said on Monday that his office has documented large-scale violations of international humanitarian law in Lebanon, some of which may amount to war crimes. You mean leveling hospitals and leveling entire city blocks, including homes, and murdering children and flattening buildings? That's not war crimes? Maybe? Quote, my office has recorded large-scale violations of international humanitarian law, some possibly amounting to war crimes, under international law. Under certain circumstances, they may also constitute crimes under international law. Again, since March 2nd, more than 4,300 people have been murdered and another 12,200 injured in Lebanon. Not Gaza, not the West Bank, not even Israel, but Lebanon. And that's according to figures from Lebanese authorities. He added that more than 135 healthcare workers, as well as many journalists and media workers, were among those targeted and killed because Israel commits war crimes. Those are all war crimes, all of them. So this one set me on fire. Israel launched a new offensive in Lebanon early in March following Hezbollah's retaliation to the Iran war, because they said, if you bomb Iran, we're going to bomb Israel, we're going to bomb Tel Aviv, and they did. Despite an initial announcement of cessation of hostilities in April and several rounds of negotiations aimed at de-escalating the conflict, quote, the Israeli military continues to ignore the ceasefire, or whatever they call it, and kill and injure people in Lebanon amid continued airstrikes and ground operations. What a shock. Fuck Israel. So Lebanon, okay, may amount to war crimes. So the UN only about 5 months too late to do anything about it, and nothing will be done about it. All right, then we've got this one. Wow. So this doesn't seem like a big deal. It's just a billboard in Hebrew, right? Until you understand from this non-voting member, non-attached member of the EU Parliament that this photo wasn't taken in Israel, but in Cyprus. Now, we've talked about Cyprus before. This time, it's political propaganda, but it's also becoming increasingly common to see billboards advertising real estate in Hebrew across the island. This person's opinion is this is simply not right. We must defend Cyprus's sovereignty, right? So what I said was the next country to become occupied by Israeli Zionists is Cyprus. They've been moving there in droves since the Iranian bombs started dropping through the $1 trillion Swiss cheese dome. The Israelis are never happy with the area they stole, and they always want someone else's land. And now it's happening in Cyprus. And yes, and of course, as Reverend Joe Blank points out, friend of the show, of course, Cyprus is a mecca for shady businesses in Israel, Ukraine, hell, even Russia. Yes, and remember that Putin considers Israel to be an extension of Russia because 2 million Russian speakers live there. More internationally, in this one, wow, another one that I think most people missed. Indie Media Award honoree Left Voice, who we don't hear from very much, but once in a while, Helena Robert last week. Vietnam's government deepens its ties with Israel. Somebody got to somebody got to somebody. I mean, really? All right. While continuing to proclaim its unwavering support for the Palestinian people's struggle, Vietnam has simultaneously expanded its bilateral economic relations with Israel, particularly in the area of military-industrial cooperation. Why are they arming up? Is this spy tech? Are they looking to get murder drones? So this one, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to let you guys read that one. Check that one out. And then finally, I wanted to bring this article from my brother, Indie Media Award honoree Ricky from Council Estate Media. Here we go. Palestine Action barrister, we talked about this before, facing trial next week for doing his job. This was one of the people that defended the Palestine Action people. If you thought the UK couldn't possibly get more authoritarian, you'd be wrong. We're now at the stage of appeasing Israel, where we're prosecuting lawyers, barristers, for doing their jobs. Leading human rights lawyer Rajiv Menon, KC, is facing trial next week for contempt of court after he defended the Filton Six. He's the first lawyer to ever be prosecuted in the UK over his closing remarks. Menon had simply laid out the facts, pointed out that the judge had imposed strict limits during the trial, and reminded the jurors of the law. That's it. The defendants were barred from presenting evidence or arguments about the broader context of their actions. In August of 2024, again as a reminder, they broke into an Elbit Systems factory that supplies weapons to Israel, such as the drones that mimic the sounds of babies crying to lure people into the open and shoot them. They weren't allowed to discuss Elbit's products or how they're used to commit war crimes. They also weren't allowed to discuss the situation in Gaza or offer a lawful excuse defense. Menon reminded the jury of their right to acquit according to conscience. He described Elbit as protected and influential in corridors of power. The trial judge viewed this as potentially undermining the court's directions and impartiality. An initial referral for contempt was overturned on appeal. However, the trial judges referred the matter again. If at first you don't get the outcome you want, just keep going until you do. So the chair of the Criminal Bar Association explained how this referral already has had a chilling effect. The quote, we've heard of barristers changing their speeches or being told to change them, including in cases where no direction has been given by a judge. And that really can't be ignored because people at the criminal bar have become uncertain and scared of what they can and can't say, scared that they somehow might be facing a charge of criminal contempt. It's starting to feel like it's about the politics of the subject matter of the trial rather than the core principles of how a barrister represents his client. When we look at the Palestine Action trials, we see a pattern where defendants aren't allowed to present evidence or explain the reasons for their actions. The justification has been that the why is not relevant, but this is patently nonsense. Consider that a person was on trial for punching someone, but they weren't allowed to explain why they did it. Now imagine that they had actually stepped in to protect someone else. Imagine claiming that context isn't relevant. Clearly, the reasons for a defendant's actions are always relevant. It's up to the jury to decide whether those reasons are good enough. However, in many cases, defendants are no longer allowed to explain their reasons. This is not just about Palestine Action, which again doesn't exist anymore. It's also happened to environmental activists. Next, it could be anyone the establishment wants to stitch up. Palestine Action defendants are getting terrorism sentences when they weren't charged with terrorist offenses and when their alleged crimes took place before the proscription of the group. It gets even worse when you consider that because of that proscription, anyone who expresses support for them can be charged with terrorism and sentenced to up to 14 years in prison. How can we call this a justice system? We have defendants who aren't allowed to explain the reasons for their actions or present evidence, who are given sentences for crimes they weren't being convicted of. We have juries not being told this would be a possibility. We have a barrister being prosecuted for explaining the law. We have retrials for defendants who weren't found guilty. We have a second referral for the barrister who had won his appeal. We have other barristers scared to represent their clients. And we have people facing jail for supporting defendants. And all of this, again, is so that Israel can get on with a genocide and that their fifis aren't hurt. It's fucking insane. I love you, brother. Support Ricky. Support Council Estate. He has literally had his name and his kids' names searched from Israel in the past. So we know that he's under attack and being watched, and still has the courage to write stuff like this and publish, knowing, living in the UK, that he could be arrested for publishing something like this. That's massive stones, and I give him huge credit. I adore that man. Again, Indie Media Award honoree, Council Estate Media. Council Estate.substack.com, I believe is it CE Media? CouncilEstateMedia.uk. All right. And awesome. Just love that guy. All right. That's everywhere that, not even everywhere. That's just some areas where internationally, outside of the United States and within their own country, that Israel is having impact on global behavior, on other governments' behavior, on persecuting ordinary citizens, on forcing other governments to work together to try to fight them. Wild. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. You know the ways to do it. They're up there on that board. You know the people who've done it. They're up there too. Appreciate them all. Cash App, $ Indie News Network. co-v.com/Indie News Network. At IndieNewsNow.com, where you can get 24/7 news. Bookmark it. Make it your homepage. It'll change whenever you go there, all the time as new stories come in. And then we're over on Substack at IndieMediaToday.com and INNNewsletter.com, where you can subscribe monthly or annually. We're live on IndieMediaToday.com. All of the clips from this show, all the segments, are put out as individual posts with videos and podcasts of their own for just the clips and segments. So if you want to listen to this in 20-minute, 30-minute, 1-hour snippets, and I publish one basically every day throughout the week. There's 5 segments. So I'll have the podcast for this one tomorrow, and then each of the segments Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then we're back on Tuesday for another episode. So that's kind of the cadence of how I do this. Okay. I want to say hi, fam, to everyone that's here. Wesley, you need to catch up. Yep, you do. And we still have more. And I still hear that thunder rumbling outside. So I'm just I'm hoping that it holds out. This is effectively a lightning round where we're going to talk about some other stuff domestically that I had not had a chance to get to. That doesn't necessarily directly involve Israel, but of course, Israel's looming over everything. So here's a thumbnail for it. War on the left being escalated. Again, we're going to whip through these. I'm not going to read the entire article. Wow, this is going to be a short episode. I didn't realize I didn't have that much. War on the left being escalated, of course, by Stephen Miller, but he wasn't the one that put all this stuff in place, and we're going to talk about that. This horrible story about ICE imposters assaulting a woman in Oregon. All right. Finally, there are some Congress people, even if it's just symbolic, who are now starting to back a bill to abolish ICE. That's now starting to make its way. That vernacular, that narrative is now starting to resonate to the point where Congress people are realizing that they need to, if they want to keep their seats, start to say some of the things that the public are saying. And then, of course, I've got this weird article published by Indie Media Award honoree Robbie Yeager from Politify. And Robbie has some reporting to do about dark money in Michigan. So let's get to it. Oh, God, this guy is so nauseating. And there he is shaking the hand of another war criminal, Marco Rubio. All right. And this is Chip Gibbons, another outstanding Assange reporter, covered the Assange trial extensively. Let me go up to the headline. The state's war on the left didn't begin with Trump, but he's escalating it. All right, so I'll read a paragraph or two. The Trump admin's drive to turn the machinery of counterterrorism against left-wing movements worldwide kicked into a higher gear this month surrounding its convening of an international ministerial of the resurgence of political terrorism, whatever the hell that is. On July 16th, 2026, Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau stood before representatives of over 60 nations assembled for the Global Summit in Washington, D.C. to introduce his boss, Secretary of State Marco Rubio. As he opened for the arch-conservative, Landau told those assembled, quote, "For those who grew up in the 1970s, the topic that we're going to be discussing today is all too familiar." What? Landau's invocation of the 1970s felt like an implicit admission that, to many, the topic of the day, left-wing political violence, felt like an anachronism. While groups like the Baader-Meinhof group in Germany or the Red Brigades in Italy in the 1970s did carry out acts of violence while proclaiming revolutionary beliefs, such groups are long defunct. Yet, according to Rubio and White House advisor Stephen Miller, left-wing political violence constitutes an immediate threat. They describe the West as being in a war for civilization itself. Such rhetoric is not new for Miller. So again, this is a long article that I encourage everyone to read through, talking about how the Biden administration actually set the stage for this. And it talks about NSPM 7 and how it's effectively a blueprint for mobilizing the U.S. counterterrorism bureaucracy against domestic left-wing movements. Okay, and even just activists in general. People who are organizing for Medicare for all, for example. Fuck these people. Next. This is from Ryan at The Last American Vagabond, Indie Media Award honoree. Oh, hold on. Wrong button. That's the button I wanted. They're right next to each other. Okay, it's insane to me how little attention this gets. Not at all the first example. He's pointed this out many times since this ICE tyranny began. Ryan calls it like he sees it. The only reason this is possible is because ICE is being allowed to violate your rights, its own policies, and the law. Hashtag two-party illusion. What are we talking about? Well,
from state police and the FBI.
Okay. Men posed as ICE agents and detained and assaulted a woman. And Homeland Security Director Tom Homan is telling everyone that they just have to comply with this. Okay. So let's watch this 3-minute news report. Like from News Guy.
First at 11, a warning from state police and the FBI after a group of men posing as ICE agents, they say, pulled over a driver in Clackamas County, detained, and then assaulted them. Catherine Cook spoke with community members. And Catherine, it sounds like this might not be the first time.
No, David, and they fear this will keep happening as long as actual ICE agents conceal their identities and refuse to show warrants and other arrest documentation.
On this dusty stretch of Highway 211, east of Woodburn, 3 men, allegedly posing as ICE agents, pulled someone over and assaulted them. This, according to Oregon State Police and the FBI. They say it happened the afternoon of July 17th. Investigators say the men were driving a blue or gray SUV with no license plates that had flashing red and blue lights. The men wore green shirts, face coverings, and tactical vests labeled police, and one of them had a rifle. After pulling the victim over, police say the men forced them out of their car, searched them, held them in their SUV, and assaulted them before finally letting them go.
This is the kind of attacks that we were afraid would actually happen. We know that when ICE roams the streets without any kind of identification, any kind of accountability, that's the message you're sending to people, that this kind of stuff is okay.
Rena Lopez is president of PECUN, Oregon's farm worker union. She says community members have spoken of similar incidents involving ICE impersonators. She's grateful police are investigating this case and alerting the public.
And anyone can put on a mask and refuse to identify themselves and claim that they're ICE. And these types of incidents are only going to intensify. If they are approached by someone who claims to be an ICE agent, remember that you have rights.
In Woodburn, community members like Luis want their neighbors to remain calm and informed.
A estar alertas, a estar pendientes.
He said, stay alert and look for exact information and stay respectful of the laws. We have the right to remain silent. Organizations like Portland Immigrant Rights Coalition send volunteers to authenticate ICE activity for those who call their hotline. In a statement to KGW, PERC condemned the incident and said the victim's family reached out to them last week. Quote, the reality is there is very little visible difference between ICE kidnapping someone and armed criminals kidnapping someone. ICE is deliberately exploiting a legal gray zone where people aren't sure if they can call 911 to report violent traffic assaults from unmarked people acting like police. This is a human rights issue endangering all Oregonians.
Police say if you're unsure whether a traffic stop is legitimate, consider stopping in a well-lit area or a spot where there are several people present. Anyone with information on this case or who may have encountered someone posing as law enforcement is asked to contact Oregon State Police. David.
Well, wait a minute. If you ride to a well-lit area and they show up and they go out and they're dressed as police and ICE, they're just going to do it in a well-lit area. Like, that's not the problem. The problem is the face coverings. The problem is the impersonation. The problem is the assaulting on the public. Okay? And yes, did not see this coming at all. We should all dress up as ICE now. Allegedly the auspicious. We can't advocate for that. Okay? Tara, ICE is a cartel. They create this scenario very deliberately to enable other cartels to snatch people, plus all the Gladio benefits. None of this is accidental. Agreed and agreed. And getting back to before, smearing all people as communists, all right, sound familiar? It certainly does. The House Un-American Activities Committee, which we referenced earlier in the show. Right. Basically, the cops should be called every time an ICE agent is around. And even still, they just run cover for the ICE agents. So does that really help? Okay, next one. Another Truth Out article, this one from Mike Ludwig. And Mike, I will admit, is highly liberal, all right? And he's a squad hopeful. But this one is an important article that I thought people should pay attention to. People keep dying in ICE custody. 13 Democrats back a bill to abolish the agency. Again, I know it's symbolic. I know it's never going to go anywhere. But the fact that at least 53 people have died in ICE custody, somebody's at least willing to politically stand up and have the courage to say, fuck ICE. While a lot of the people in Congress want to fund them, while the Capitol cops certainly support ICE. Okay? You have Delia Ramirez. All right, that's one. And so you've got 13 of them. And again, I'm not going to read this article because I'm not a big fan of introducing legislation that we know has no chance of going anywhere within the House other than to put it on the record that this is actually happening. We acknowledge that it's happening. Some people here don't want it to continue happening, but the overwhelming majority of people do. And so it's going to continue happening until everybody decides they don't want it to. Okay. Also, finally, we're going to talk about my friend and Indie Media Award honoree, Robbie Yeager. By the way, Truth Out, Indie Media Award honoree. Forgot to mention that. All right. The plot thickens. So here's the story. Interesting. FCC filings show that the Michigan Sunrise PAC media buyer as a company called American Media Buyers, but the address was given to American Media Partners in Chicago, which has been around since 2017. FEC filings show American Media Partners in Wyoming, LLC, was registered this month. So, weird stuff. Who's this Bill Werner guy? Then they changed this to like Robert W. Werner. His name is William. So it's still Bill Werner. They just changed the name that it went under, right? So here's the story. The plot thickens. I reached out to this American Media Partners in Chicago to see if they had any relation to the Wyoming LLC listed on the Michigan Sunrise FEC filing. The rep denied a link to the LLC or to Bill Werner listed on the file. They seemed genuinely taken aback. So what's happening here, and what it seems, is that there is an LLC in Wyoming, which is highly right-wing, by the way, and also the home of crypto. Golden Monarch is probably screaming in the chat, that's where the crypto people are. Lummis, she's corrupt. Yes, I know. Yes, she is. So Robbie continues here from American Media Partners, quote, we have no ties to Mr. Werner or the American Media Partners in Wyoming. We've never facilitated advertising for Michigan Sunrise. We're not sure why our address is associated with this, but we've contacted the station to correct the information. They want to cast the belief that this funding against a Democrat is coming from another Democrat. They don't want it. It's coming from Republicans, but they, for whatever reason, want to hide that it's coming from Republicans. And they're spending millions of dollars. Republicans are spending millions of dollars on Democratic races to put the people that they want to face to make sure that they win their primaries. It's fucking crazy. All right. I said, my guess is that they were taken aback that someone dug deep enough to find it. It appears to me that either they lied to you or they were unaware that they were possibly being used in a money laundering scheme to hide where donor money is coming from. And based on what Robbie's follow-up was, it sounded like it was more of the latter than the former. But he wrote a whole article about this, all right? And I'll start at the top. Suspected GOP front pack routing spending through new LLCs. So this is one of the new games of hiding dark money. They set up a brand new LLC in a state after a filing period and before a primary, but before the next filing period, so that nobody even finds out what happened until after the whole thing's over. And they'll set up an LLC, and they'll set up a super PAC, and they'll fund the money from the LLC. They'll donate to the super PAC because businesses can donate an unlimited sum, right? Thanks to Citizens United. So the LLC donates to the super PAC. The super PAC then buys advertising to smear a specific candidate or to in support of a candidate, but of course without the knowledge of said candidate. In some cases, it may actually be a case that they don't really know it. Right? So this filings show that Politify show that Michigan Sunrise PAC, who spent over $590,000 supporting Will Lawrence in Michigan 7, funneled spending through two new LLCs following the playbook of previous subversive PACs used by Republican operatives. This is a Republican playbook. This is not Democrats trying to hide money. This is not Soros. And that's what the Republicans are trying to do here. They call the PAC Michigan Sunrise because everyone affiliates Sunrise Group with Soros money. But this has nothing to do with Soros. They can then boogeyman this, even though they funded it themselves, with more than $590,000 in independent expenditures in Michigan 7. Michigan Sunrise was registered with the FEC on July 20th with a treasurer named Bill McAllister, a name subsequently already changed to Robert W. McAllister that same day. Oops, I didn't want to say the Bill because that hides that his name's actually William and that people call him Bill. So when you call for Robert McAllister, they go, there's no Robert McAllister here. The address is linked to a commercial shipping store in Battle Creek, Michigan, like a FedEx drop. We've covered a story like that where a guy who was funding the Rand Paul, the Massey thing, set up an LLC in Delaware and funded a PAC out of Ohio to influence some voting there. Maybe in Kentucky. The latest independent expenditure filings show that this super PAC spent over $500,000 on text messaging and media placement through, again, American Media Partners, LLC, that's the Wyoming corporation, with almost $100,000 supporting Lawrence and $423,000 supporting Mastum. The expenditure filings came just a day after the committee disclosed a separate $68,000 direct mail expenditure supporting that same Lawrence candidate through Timberline Point LLC. You see what they're doing? They're setting up these shadow LLCs with big donor money. Nobody knows where it's coming from. They can then do media ad buys on behalf of a candidate. Nobody knows where it's coming from. And then they have to file with the SEC, or they shut down the LLC before the filing period ends. And there's nobody to prosecute. There's nobody to go after. Spending comes amid growing scrutiny of Michigan Sunrise PAC after Punchbowl News reported that the committee shared characteristics with other outside groups, including Lead Left, Real Change, and Progressive Champions. Why are they using those names? Because they want to give the impression that there's big money on the left coming to fund against corporate candidates. But there is no big money on the left. Because Soros is not left. He's a right-winger. Everybody that funds Democrats are right-wingers. Right? But all these campaigns have been linked to efforts to influence Democratic primaries in competitive House districts. They're trying to handpick their opponents because they feel like progressives are actually easier for Republicans to beat. So it's similar to a Pied Piper strategy where they're spending hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars in each race in order to ensure the outcome, the candidate that they want wins. Corporate records reviewed by Politify show America Media Partners was organized in Wyoming on July 16th, just 4 days before Michigan Sunrise registered with the FEC, and 10 days before receiving more than $500,000 in reported campaign work. Again, they figured this out and got it dialed down to a science. And I'm sure all this stuff is laid out and put into place before the money starts changing hands. The use of recently created Wyoming LLCs mirrors a broader trend in political spending in which newly formed entities are used as campaign vendors, often making it difficult to determine who is ultimately providing consulting, advertising, or production services. Michigan Sunrise's spending also mirrors several characteristics previously identified in other mystery super PACs that intervened in Democratic primaries this cycle. Right? And he talks about some of those. Those PACs, like Michigan Sunrise, use pop-up LLCs, mostly in Wyoming, to route their spending through. Democrats don't do anything in Wyoming. Wyoming is the home of crypto and the home of ultra-right-wing Republicans and Jackson Hole. Unlike those PACs, however, Michigan Sunrise has used the standard FEC file method of submitting their paperwork. Popular Information's Judd Legume was able to catch those earlier PACs with findings that they were using Crimson, a submission software that almost exclusively was used by Republican committees, because Crimson is red, color of Republicans, but also Harvard. Remember that a lot of these Republican douchebags have a Harvard connection. The Harvard Crimson is the name of the newspaper for Harvard University. Then there's the issue of the bank used by Michigan Sunrise. Black Hills Community Bank is a little-known, seldom-used financial institution, but records show it's the bank of choice for Republican Congressman Dusty Johnson of South Dakota, as well as South Dakota AG Marty Jackley, also a member of the Republican Party. The committee's website, like its suspected predecessors, is bare bones and offers little information. Because why should they? They don't have to. Nobody holding them accountable. The spending targets one of the country's most closely watched Democratic House primaries. Lawrence, a Sunrise Movement co-founder backed by Bernie Sanders, has emerged as a leading progressive candidate in Michigan's 7th district. Hiss boo to Bernie, while Mastum, a former Navy SEAL and military aide to President Barack Obama, has attracted support from more establishment Democrats. The winner will challenge Republican Representative Tom Barrett in November. All right, so this is an incumbent seat. But what they're trying to do is get the Sunrise Movement guy in there because they feel like they could smear him and Soros way worse than a former Navy SEAL and military aide to Obama. Because even though he might have worked for Obama, he's got the whole military angle working for him. Outside spending in the race has accelerated, thanks, Robbie, as Democrats debate which candidate is best positioned to flip the swing district. I can tell you which one they've already handpicked, and that's the corporate guy, the guy who worked for Obama. Whether additional filings reveal who's behind Michigan Sunrise PAC's vendor network, or whether the Wyoming companies appear in other political committees, remains an open question. Michigan Sunrise is likely to file contribution disclosures in late August, although that will be too late for Michigan voters to know who's funding these messages. So like I said, the deadline to file is after the primary. So you don't find out until afterwards, if you ever find out at all. And of course, Conservative Americans PAC didn't respond to requests for comment at the time of publishing, and never will. And sadly, this only has 2 likes and 1 restack. Shameful. Go to Jaeger, JAEGER.substack.com. Give it a like over there. Give it a share. Let other people learn about how Republicans are actually funding progressive Democratic campaigns to challenge establishment Democrats, split the vote potentially, put in a candidate that they feel is more beatable. And all of this is happening in plain sight. All right, I got another thing from Robbie. Now, suspected GOP front pack Michigan Sunrise's pro-Will Lawrence, anti-Matt Masdam ad buy revealed to total over $500,000. All right, this is the thing about, this is the filing showing that 10 days ago, they just created this America Media Partners LLC. There's just a registered agent that's a normal, company, corporation type of thing. They're hiding who the actual owner is. This is an authorized individual that they hired as a corporate attorney. And because of attorney-client privilege, he does not have to disclose who his customer is. Okay, but again, Wyoming people, there ain't many wealthy Democrats funding these races out of Wyoming. This is definitely, okay, GOP front pack. And why are they calling it Sunrise? You've got to start to question this stuff. I got one more. Good. I still have a little bit of time. Then we can do the GoFundMes. How to protect people's nest eggs from the SpaceX scam. And this is a longer article out of Natalia Renta, out of inequality.org. All right. And we talked about SpaceX in depth. Friend of the network, Rich Slutsky over at Counterspin, Lies, Damn Lies, and Spin, published an extensive deep dive into the SpaceX IPO and explaining many reasons why it likely will never make the kind of money it thinks it will. It will likely be used as a front for a lot of things. It doesn't deserve the valuation that it has. And a lot of rules have been kind of bypassed in order to add this stock potentially to indexes, which would then require the index funds, and that's what this is going to say, to then purchase a portion of that stock. So let me read just the beginning of it. Millions of working people keep their hard-earned money in low-cost index funds, S&P 500 funds, NASDAQ funds, Dow Jones funds, to secure a dignified retirement and meet other financial goals. In choosing index funds, these everyday investors assume financial industry intermediaries, regulators, and lawmakers are working to keep this investment strategy a safe and conservative one. What these index funds are is a basket of stocks. So the S&P 500 is a group of 500 of the most reputable, largest companies in the world. And these index funds buy shares of all of them as required. They can't buy anything else. They have to spend all the money in the fund on this, and then as those stocks grow in value and they distribute dividends, they reinvest and they continue to grow that portfolio of which people own shares. However, the infrastructure that has historically given index fund investors this sense of security is eroding. Index providers, exchanges, and asset managers are all changing their policies and practices in ways that weaken investor protection to the benefit of executives, directors, and other corporate insiders, just in time for several Silicon Valley companies hitting the market and going public, like Stripe, like OpenAI, like Anduril. Meanwhile, the SEC is turning away from its investor protection mission to protect corporate insiders, and states are weakening investor protection tools to convince corporate management to pick them as their state of incorporation. Hence, you remember that Delaware used to be the state of choice. Now they're moving it toward Wyoming, because Wyoming is now trying to appeal to businesses to set up shadow LLCs. SpaceX provides a clear example. Elon Musk's company went public in June at a sky-high valuation divorced from the company's fundamentals. Mega AI companies Anthropic and OpenAI are also expected to go public soon. Traditionally, the major indices have required company stock to trade publicly for a length of time to establish their financial stability before adding them to an index. But nearly all the major index providers have recently changed their rules to fast-track SpaceX and other large, recently public companies. Notably, the S&P held the line after pressure from Congress as well as AFL-CIO and this person's org, Americans for Financial Reform. This is an interesting article. I encourage everyone to read the rest of it. And if you want to, this is basically like asking Congress to hold the rules of the SEC to account and to enforce those rules and require that time period for them to establish themselves. Because what happens if people start to bail on SpaceX in the next 6 months and the stock craters? It could crater the entire index and bring down the broader market with it, as well as people's retirement portfolios that they depend on. It's dangerous. Okay. So that's our lightning round, which I think was as long as any other segment. But we covered 5 different stories from domestically that I think you should pay attention to. All right. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. You know the ways to do it. Cash App, $, Indie News Network. co-fi.com/Indie News Network. At IndieNewsNow.com, you can leave a tip at our Stripe link. You can also browse 24/7 news from all independent sources completely ad-free. Or you can subscribe over at Substack on a monthly or an annual basis at IndieMediaToday.com or for the network at INN at INNNewsletter.com. All right. I've got some things on the GoFundMe front. Unfortunately, I don't have very much news or anything to update. Maybe if Cowboy Kitty's in here, he can let me know what's happening with Natalia, if anything has changed, or if we're still in this holding pattern that it's now been, 13 months, more than a year, since she's been held in ICE detention. We'll get to Natalia in a little bit. First, some good news. You all know this cat. This is Yeti Jesus. INN's Yeti Jesus, the Canadian crippler. No, he's not. No, that's a whole other guy. No, he's the Canadian heart transplant survivor twice. So he recently had a new heart put in. He's doing great. Amazing. So heart's taken well. Hit the beach, showing off his scars. That's his wife, Shauna, with him. Love him to death. He's on the road to recovery. They're staying in Nova Scotia for a month, and then they'll be back in the yurt and in the cabin in their property on the place that they were homesteading and trying to live off the land. So a little update on our friend Yeti. All right. Give him some love. He's over on Facebook. His Twitter got hacked. He's also over on Telegram, if you've got Telegram. And if you need to reach him, let me know. I can put you in touch. And then we'll get to the GoFundMes that we get to every week. I have not heard from Will in a couple of weeks. Will's been struggling, with bills. His wife, Elizabeth, was diagnosed a couple months ago with breast cancer. She went through chemotherapy. She went through the Red Devil and the worst of it. I believe she's just like right now in recovery until the next phase. And I don't know if that next phase is surgery or radiation. He told me that he had incurred a ton of debt, but then somebody at the hospital that they were at took pity on them and told them that if they went to the hospital across the street, everything would be covered. And so they did. And now they're getting help, but they still need help paying their bills and getting through. And yeah, no insurance was the problem, but now at least the treatments are getting done. And Elizabeth has a fundraiser, a GoFundMe here that I've shown every week since Will reached out to me. Last week there was $41.15 in there. Let's see, same amount raised. So nothing new this week there. I did want to, again, shout it out and ask that if you're able to, and you have $5, $10, anything, please. Fred Edward is just a sweetheart of a man, and he's given it a couple times $15 or $20 and said, make sure that each one of these GoFundMes gets a little bit of extra money, because it's heartbreaking to see them not move for people that are in need. And look, if you can't, I totally understand. I'm not trying to guilt anybody who can't afford it, but I do want to implore that anyone that is of means and does have a couple of bucks, please do that. Natalia. All right. Again, Cowboy Kitty's sister-in-law was stopped at a routine traffic stop 14 months ago. They suspected her of DUI. She wasn't. They impounded her car and put her in an ICE detention facility in Ohio. Sentin Bloom wrote an article explaining all about the corruption that's going on there and how they're locking up immigrants for profit. She has been deemed by an ICE judge, or an immigrations judge, to be deported to Ukraine, in spite of the fact that she has been granted asylum in the United States. They don't care. She was following the process to do all the right things. It makes no sense. And again, anything that anybody can do, and I know that he's taken some already to distribute out, but if we can get any more to this GoFundMe, every dollar helps. So again, I'll drop this one into the chats as well. Again, if you have a GoFundMe, or you know somebody close to the show or close to you that is struggling, and I can showcase or share their GoFundMe, this is one of the things that I want to do with this platform, is to amplify these stories. Okay, like Aspen. All right. There's kill your egregores. I have United Healthcare. Spent 7 hours in the hospital for shortness of breath and severe chest pains. $10,000 charged with the copay. Still 3,600. It's nuts. We need universal healthcare. We need Medicare for all. Okay. Oh, well, that's good to know, Cowboy Kitty. She has a new judge, and she was at least transferred to a better facility. Speaking of Natalia. Okay, Aspen, the story with Aspen, we've been talking about this again for 15 months. May of last year, she went to a music festival in Florida with a friend of a friend in an RV. Her friends couldn't go. On the way back from that music festival, they were pulled over. The vehicle was searched, the RV they were in. Mass quantities of drugs were found, and her and the driver were charged with trafficking. This is Halo Benson, Assange activist for Oklahoma, and her daughter, Aspen Martin. I interviewed them last year in October. We did a fundraiser live stream in October. The Sentin Bloom wrote an article about the struggle that she had in the county lockup for the 15 days she was there, and about Halo driving from Oklahoma to Georgia and sleeping in the parking lot every night until her daughter was released. And they're still pending trial. So right now, they're just kind of laying low. They have expert witnesses that they're in the process of hiring. Their GoFundMe had hit a certain level, and Halo said she basically didn't want to increase the amount because she didn't want to jinx it. The amount at right now, I believe, is over 12,500. It had reached that number. They're going to need a lot more. So yeah, 12,625 they're at now. Anything that anybody can do, that it really makes all the difference. I don't know what they're doing for income over there right now. So shout out to my sister Halo and to Aspen. We're always thinking about you, and every week we'll continue to talk about this. And of course, put your sunflowers up, everyone, because it's Shanda time. We will keep Shanda's light going, and unfortunately, we watched Shanda struggle and fight cancer for almost 2 years. And cancer ended up taking over. And back in April, we lost her, and I decided to take her Zago Brothers illustration from her Indie Media Awards honoree and put that with her years, make it a t-shirt and a hoodie and a tank top. One of these years we'll actually get the stickers that Ryan has promised over here at Big Frog, and we'll also adjust the shop around a little bit. I have a couple new things I want to add, some things I want to remove. All these things are discounted to the lowest possible level so that you can afford them. And any profits we make on the Shanda stuff, we're going to donate to cancer charity, because we love Shanda and fuck cancer. And yeah, we're going to keep that light going, and we're going to continue to honor her and to contribute toward to fighting this fucking horrible disease. It's a killer. It really is. Miss her terribly, and I know a lot of us do too. So as a reminder, again, you go to indiemediaawards.substack.com, and there's a page that has all of Shanda's old links there, so that you could go back if you want to reminisce, if you want to find her old content, if you want to watch some of her old videos. You're welcome to do so, and I encourage that. Okay. All right. Wow, look at that. We're making it in 2 hours, fam. I love it. Okay. That was a tough show, I know. I appreciate again everybody sticking with us. Tomorrow night there will be no INN news, I believe, because Colin is on vacation. I spoke with Jesse. He and Jess have a gig Thursday night. So our American tradition that was scheduled for this Thursday will likely be held next Thursday. So Friday night we'll be live for Angel and Friends, or Angel AF. All right. And then stay tuned for all the clips from this show that'll come out throughout the week. Saturday night, I believe there will be a pro wrestling talk. There was no boat smashing into other boats this past Sunday. Reef had a family thing. So we're going to be doing the uncensored version of boats this Sunday that we did not do last Sunday. So check that out, 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 Pacific on Sunday night. And then I'll be back here for Tuesday night. Oh, by the way, if you missed last night, I stitched together the entire Whitney Webb Polymarket article into one continuous 2 hour and 20-minute stream, and ran that last night at 10 Eastern. So you can go back to all the INN channels and watch if you're willing, or just listen to me read it live and comment on it. But it's long, and it's all stitched together. And I had not put it together. I don't think anybody's really read it as one long article on stream anywhere. So if you want to listen to that, please do. All right. Gonna head out for the night. I love you all. Support independent media, because we need it more than ever. I love you all again. See you next Tuesday, fam. Night. No! We just fucking lost the stream!
Who are these people?
I think I liked it better being blind, when I couldn't read between the lines, and when I couldn't see the cracks in the structure that lay bare before me the whole time. I think I liked it better back when I suspended disbelief and swallowed pride. I thought I knew the difference in the red from the blue, but they both bleed us so dry. They both bleed us so dry.
My favorite songs don't hit the same way. I get to the end of a 4-minute track and I'm only looking back thinking, what did they actually say? So
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want?